Hello and welcome back to the Football Hipsters podcast in association with Bergkamp Wonderland. I'm sure you know that by now. First things first, I want to, I should first of all say, hello, my name is Kris. And today I'm joined by Josh. So say hello, Josh.
Hello, my name is Josh.
Hello.
It's very confusing as well because I was like, oh, am I starting this one? Oh, God. What are we? Is this ABW?
It's like, who's it? Who? What's our purpose? What podcast are we on? What? It's all a bit random, isn't it? Yeah, we wanted to get together and do a couple of one-on-one podcasts, which is what we're going to do. Just before we jump into today's first of those, I do just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who tuned in to the rebirth, if you will, of our first podcast that myself, Josh, Lana, and Joel and Drew were a part of last week. Well over 1,500 views now, which is amazing. Like, genuinely is. I think if you'd have said to me we'd have got 50 views, I'd have said, great, that's cool. That it was really just about us keeping ourselves busy, talking about the sport we love, and just putting something out there for people, especially with our link with ABW. So thank you to every one of you that listened. It might just have been John listening 1,500 times. I don't know. But if it was, thanks, John. But no, in all seriousness, we really appreciate it. Also, a couple of you have asked, where is John? And also, where's Ross? They're still part of the team, don't worry. John is massively under stress of work at the moment. The company he's working for has a lot of overseas work going on. So it's a struggle to find time for him, but he'll be back as and when hopefully things go back to normal. And Ross, similar. He's got a lot of bits and bobs going on, so hopefully we'll have him back at some point soon as well. So yes, thank you. Surprising, Josh, wasn't it? People seem to remember us, first of all, and second of all, seem to enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I'd always like to say I put out top quality content when I'm either on ABW or the Hipsters, but
naturally,
I can't say for everyone else. But no, it was great to have everyone back and just shooting the breeze about just football in general, because even though we haven't got anything to watch, to be honest, it's actually quite nice as having a break. It gave us an opportunity to kind of come back because there wasn't what happened this week in football. We didn't need to cover all of that. We could go nice and holistic for the first episode back.
Yeah, it was nice, wasn't it, to have and just one topic to focus on rather than 50 games and God knows what else. So, that's
to be fair, the topic was exactly the same when it's football coming back in your league.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is so true. That is so true.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good to be back. And as I say, as we said in the first episode, it was very much a test the water thing. We probably would have carried on even if we had got 50 viewers or 5 viewers. But the fact we got so many, I think, has kind of made our minds up that we want to keep doing these as much as possible. So we are going to do a couple of kind of one-on-one interviews. So I'm going to obviously sit down with Josh today. I already am. Also going to record one with Lana, Drew, and Joel in the coming days. So look out for those in your feeds, probably into the latter part of this week or beginning of next. But we are going to jump into what's going on. I should say as well, for our viewers on YouTube or viewers in video format, I apologise. I'm not underdressed deliberately. I've just been for a run, so I'm very sorry about the flesh on display. Podcast viewers, you're either very lucky or very unlucky, depending on which way you fall. Anyway, Josh, enough about my torso. What do you make of the last few days? I'm going to talk to Drew in more depth about the German situation, but their league is now quote unquote greenlit. And we say greenlit, it's coming back in format. There's still a lot of things that need to be ironed out as to how it's going to come back. But the league is coming back. The Premier League and EFL, to me, as we said in our first podcast the other day, it still seems that it's so much about money. What do you make of the last few days' events in terms of players starting to speak out now? There's suggestions that players might return to training in masks. There's this neutral venue. Club quite close to your heart, Brighton, have expressed their concerns about playing either at a neutral venue or having games at their stadium for other teams. What do you make of it all at the moment? Do you feel like the Premier League is just buying time to see how Germany goes, or do you feel like they're just thinking about themselves at this stage?
Yeah, I think it was always going to be the case that the Premier League and EFL, and just the whole English game, was going to wait to see what someone else did rather than take it upon themselves to make any kind of radical decision. We sort of, I think I alluded to in the first episode, the way Premier League dealt with VAR. So I try and get my correct TLAs in the right order. So getting VAR in, we saw that, we were the last league to really take it on board. And then we decided to do it completely differently to everyone else and still put it under the same kind of banner as VAR. So I think if or when the Premier League comes back, I think they'll look and see what Germany have done, but do something very different because, we're English. We do everything our own way. Doesn't matter what you've done. We might use you as some kind of test bed, but actually we'll take none of your findings and we'll just go our own way anyway and say, oh, the reason it didn't work for you this way is because you didn't do it properly, not it doesn't work. It's not a solution. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens with the German system. I know that they've got fewer games they need to bring back, because they're only an 18-team league. This is where I'm trying to remember the Bundesliga. Pretty sure there's only 18 teams in it. Yeah. So they've got fewer game weeks to fit in, whereas as a 20 or 24 team league, there's just not going to be these kind of time for fixtures. I think coming on to the terms of what the Premier League are looking at, I'm not really sure how they're going to try and address it. We've seen, or certainly I've seen, the players coming out that still think it's farcical, some of the measures they want to implement. But then because there's no official channel.
Sorry, carry on.
Oh, Kris. How many of these have you done? And after I said, unfortunately, people might be able to hear my dishwasher go off in the background. But yeah, I think in terms of some of the news that's come out, I've not seen anything. To be fair, I can't even remember the name of who's in charge of the Premier League now. It's not Greg Dyke, I don't think. It's someone else now.
It's not the Garlic fella, is it? There's a guy called Garlic, and then there's
maybe there was someone, and then he or she didn't take over.
Oh yeah, and then another guy got it, and yeah, I'll try and find out. There's the dishwasher.
There we go. That's fucking cute. So yeah, I've not seen anything official come out from them. So I have a feeling with some of the measures, and I'll put inverted commas on that we've seen come out, might be a little bit kind of fake news. Things like, players with games will be wearing masks and red cards if you spit on the pitch. And I'm not sure how true some of these are, but the kind of ones that I've seen responses from clubs, the main one being neutral venues, I don't see how that keeps the integrity of the league at all, unless you're looking at voiding or not bringing relegation in this season. Because if you think about it, earlier in the season, we saw Norwich with home advantage beat Man City. And now another team that's in a similar situation, like Brighton, you're currently just going to take home advantage away from them now. Now you're not going to say, Brighton are definitely up for getting 3 points against Man City when they travel down to the Amex, but it's not the point. We've seen these things season after season in this part of, the league, that you'll get a couple of upsets because you've got certain clubs, certain teams, especially like mid-table ones, who know they're safe. Your Burnleys, your kind of Southamptons of yesterseason, Everton, they kind of sit back and relax, and kind of a relegation team kind of looks at that and goes, that's 3 points there. Got the flip-flops on. We're on the beach already. And I think that's the kind of thing that you're missing a huge part of the latter part of the season. If this was in the middle of the season, maybe you could argue that maybe it'd be okay. Or if you did a whole season at neutral venues, that would be fine. But then you're always going to be using someone's football stadium. So, if Arsenal or Brighton were going to be neutral venues, which have been mooted, why would Arsenal not play at the Emirates, for example? So it does seem like it's a little bit confusing about why they're trying to do it. And to be fair, if Sky or BT, if the only thing they need to do to fulfill those contracts is complete the league, and they can say, well, we don't technically have relegation this year, if that's all they need to do, then fine, I think. But I would still be a little bit, I'd feel a little bit hard done by if I was a lower league team or a lower part of the division team, and I couldn't play in my home stadium because how little, even if there isn't a crowd there, there's still the familiarity.
Yeah,
of you playing in there.
Yeah,
exactly. We saw it with Spurs when they went to Wembley for those 2 seasons, and how they struggled in that first season, and Arsenal, of course, for the Champions League, even though they were at home. And to be fair, had their own fans with them, there was still the familiarity of, the actual squad, those 15, 19 players that were there, and the rest of the backroom staff. They knew where they were going. They kind of settled into that environment, and they know, without the crowd, I know there's been jokes you could say, oh, well, Man City will be fine. And, it's always a bit quiet down at the Amex or the Emirates. So without fans might not necessarily be a thing. But yeah, I'd be interested to see what happens with the German experiment. I think at time of recording, they're due to come back, was it 22nd or 29th? I saw from Raphael Honigstein.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see what they, of May.
Yeah.
To see how they deal with it, and then what the English game does.
There's so many things to pick up on with that, because I mean, there's a Spanish Copa del Rey that's being played abroad, playing that abroad, and big journalists have said how big the difference is in atmosphere just at those grounds, because although they're technically fans of clubs, it's not necessarily the sort of the regular fans, or it may not be the fans on the doorstep. The other sort of issue I have with this whole neutral venue, there's still a Merseyside derby that's still got to be played this season. There's still a North London derby that's got to be played this season. If you're seriously telling me that if we play Arsenal Spurs or Liverpool Everton at Villa Park, for example, you're saying that there aren't Arsenal and Spurs or Liverpool and Everton fans in Birmingham? Is that what we're saying? We're saying that people don't get in cars and drive. And I know people are sort of saying people are intelligent enough to respect the rules. There'll always be some idiots. I've been out this afternoon, as I said at the start of the pod, I've been out for my run just a short time ago. It's Plymouth in the UK. It's the southwest. It's quite a pretty part of the country. Sun's out. You honestly wouldn't know that anything had happened in the last week. There's people everywhere. There, obviously there's no shops where I've run. I've run around the coastal path. People out picnicking. There's people out walking dogs. There's families out. There's cars everywhere. You honestly wouldn't think anything had happened in this country or the world at all. And that, to me, it angers me a bit, because it's almost like people have just accepted that the government in the UK are going to come out tomorrow, time recording on Wednesday, and say, oh yeah, we're going to ease lockdown. Yet yesterday we've reported is the highest death rate across Europe now. There's so much of a risk that these footballers, these are the same footballers that have been vilified for not supporting the country with its money, and yet basically it seems to me like money is dictating that they come back. And as you said, I don't understand how you can have, if Aston Villa play Norwich, like you said, actually that's a bad example. Aston Villa play Man United, and in the first game earlier on in the season, they went to Old Trafford and lost. I can't even remember whether they've even played, but just say they did. And then on the strength of them playing at a neutral venue, Man United turn them over 6-0 or 1-0, doesn't matter which, and they go down as a result of that game. You've got another Sheffield United Carlos Tevez situation, haven't you? Where the Villa could turn around and say, well, you can't prove categorically that if we'd have played that game at Villa Park, we wouldn't have got the 3 points, because we played it at Goodison or whatever, we didn't get the 3 points. And if you lose a player as a result of it, there's just so many ins and outs here. Liverpool win the title. Is anyone going to really look at them as proper champions? I mean, I'm not. I just think, and that, okay, I'm probably slightly biased there, but there's nothing against Liverpool, whatever my club allegiance is. But I think even Liverpool fans, I'm sure a lot will celebrate it, and rightly so. But there's got to be an element of this thinking, like, how can we do this? The whole thing boggles my mind. I cannot understand how we can't just say, look, this is a write-off. We start again next season. There's no relegation. I like the idea of extending it so that, two clubs from the Championship come up, and there's no relegation. And then you have a season where there's 5 relegated. I mean, at least everyone's on a level playing field. What's your understanding of how the EFL are dealing with this? Because I know that's an area that you're interested in as well.
Yeah, in terms of the EFL, from what I can see, in where I am in the country, there's no one in their office at the moment. They're all on lockdown, so I'm not sure anything hugely is happening with them. I think they're a little bit governed by the Premier League, because the Premier League's kind of pushing to come back so much. It's the kind of, well, if you're coming back, are you giving us 3? Are we expecting to accommodate 3 additional teams next season into the EFL? And I think that's the biggest thing. Whereas other leagues have got, who runs the top division also runs the second division.
Yeah.
I think in the league, I think certainly in France, it's the kind of situation there, isn't it? That everything's run by the French Football Federation.
Yeah. One fits all. Yeah.
One fits all. Whereas we've got this behemoth of a thing with 20 teams that is completely different to, other, as we kind of say, there are sleeping giants in the leagues below. The likes of Leeds that are pushing to come back. You got Sheffield Wednesday down there. I know, forgive me whilst I rattle through and miss big giants as I go down. Sunderland are down in the second. They're down in League One. Got Portsmouth down there as well. These huge teams that you don't necessarily have in other leagues, or other countries. You don't have 5 leagues of professional football.
Yeah.
By maybe the 3rd tier in most leagues, that's where it kind of coming into semi-professional. I think for most other countries anyway. There's some out there that can't even pull together a second division. It's just the first. So I think that's where the slight difference is in terms of England, because football's so deep rooted, and also the financial troubles we've had as well down there. I know we're not the only league that doesn't have clubs that go bust or have general financial irregularities in there, but I'd be interested to kind of, a decision that fits the bill at the top of the championship might not fit the bill for someone at the bottom of League Two. Because at the bottom of the League Two, if you get relegated, that's you more or less going from a professional club to, in some cases, semi-professional. And you're getting that coming in. So I think that's where the EFL's got a huge job on its hands, but also needs the Premier League to help them out. And as we've kind of said earlier with the Premier League, it's just so loose. They're not really sure what they're doing, and there's some crackpot ideas coming out. And I think the EFL want kind of an excuse to basically cancel the season there. But the Premier League are pushing so hard that we might end up seeing something happen with the EFL. But again, depends on how receptive the Premier League are to clubs coming up from the EFL. Because the EFL's got to look at that as well and say, okay, if Leeds and West Brom are going up and no one's coming down, great. We can now make plans, and also if they say, you know what, if you can get the playoffs, take the playoffs as now, or do points per game for the playoffs, because there are teams that have played fewer games than others. I think Borough are one of those that are just on the cusp of the playoffs at the moment, but have got a game in hand. I think they're one of those that could rightly say, do it points per game. And you know what? The playoffs are normally home and away, and then neutral venue, being Wembley. You could do those neutral. It's just 2 games. You're trying to organise, 4 teams with 3 matches, and just do little knockout competition. Gives you your playoffs, gives you the one person who's going up as well, and helps them out. Because again, that's a decision that the EFL can't make yet on, are we going to do playoffs? Because we can't do playoffs in League Two if we're not going to do playoffs at the Premier League for the Championship, because we're going to be a team imbalanced.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, does it? From that regard. What do you make of the? I know it's a sort of story you still got to read up on, but there was reports that came out yesterday. The articles on The Athletic, that senior doctors, club officials, again in the Premier League, essentially got together as a mass, had a large-scale meeting online, and they've put forward a document to the Premier League, basically asking questions from a health and safety standpoint. The talk is this set of questions was 100 long, 100 different questions or more, and they are such things as how many ambulances will be required? What if a player has an injury in training as opposed to a match situation? How do you manage if two players have a collision and there's two broken bones, for example, on the pitch? How are you sanitizing club equipment? How are you cleaning grass? How are you cleaning club stadia? How are you managing the interaction of club officials with players, families, friends, etc.? Like there's so many questions, and they've essentially turned around and said, we're putting forward to you the medical evidence, much in line with what the government set to report on tomorrow, and the Premier League are essentially kind of just poo-pooing that and saying, well, that's fine, we'll manage it. It strikes me that the Premier League are not really thinking about the welfare of the players or the staff or indeed the country as a whole. They're really just looking at it as how can we get football played. And I just sort of wonder from your standpoint, like, where would you stand on that medical grounds? I mean, if you were in control of this, would it even be up for debate at this stage when we have no vaccine at this stage, and we still have members of our National Health Service understaffed and underutilized for the equipment they need for the general public? There's still people being refused, cancer treatment, and yet we're talking about managing footballers.
Yeah, I think in terms of, this is where the Bundesliga example will help us a lot and kind of see how they're doing it, what they're putting in. Because I think it's a little bit like the Premier League have said, yeah, we're going to come back and we're going to target this date. But that's all they've kind of got in their plan. Whereas the Premier League doctors have run away with this thing and got all of their information there. And you know what? It's a bit too early for this kind of document to come over to them. I think that's what the Premier League's kind of done with it, poo-pooing it. They've rather gone, actually, you know what? We're not at this stage yet where we need to be asking doctors for everything because we haven't got these kind of plans set out yet in this detail. I think that's where the Bundesliga is slightly ahead, because the government's obviously looked through this, seen what their plans are, and gone, yeah, sure, you can come back by the 22nd because we're going to roll out of lockdown at that point. But this is where it's kind of happening back to front, is that we're a couple of weeks behind with the virus. I know the Premier League wants to get back in early because it wants to maintain, its foothold and kind of broadcasting. Is that if it comes, I'm not going to say, Bundesliga is going to be the next big league for, television rights. But if it comes back in earlier, it's got a hell of a chance of being picked up and next season earning a lot more. What kind of broadcast rights could they get in the UK next season? Because you know what? Every football fan who's been starved of it, suddenly it popped up on BT Sport. Everybody started tuning in, and they've got teams now and they want to see, and they've got invested in that league and they start watching it. And soon that kind of broadcast revenue is going to pump up, because as well as, I want to see Super Sunday might be Burnley versus West Brom. And to be honest, it sounds like a dead rubber already. But you know what? At 2:00 on Sunday is, just name it, Schalke versus Dortmund. Yeah. You're like, oh, I'm going to switch that on because you know what? I saw Schalke play last season. They were quite good.
I already do that.
Yeah,
I know what
exactly.
you mean.
Yeah, there's people out there that, there's just so many people watch football who don't necessarily or haven't got the time to diversify their horizons into other leagues, have now been given this opportunity, and you know what? They'll start doing it. And I think that's a problem.
The thing I can't get my head around as well is like looking at the leagues, like the examples like you've used there. You said about Bundesliga and Serie A is now there's talk of that happening. Spain, there isn't really any discussion about the league coming back at this point, other than clubs coming back to training. We know France have taken the sort of unprecedented step of saying no sport until September. Now, the last time I checked, and I could be wrong here, but Italy, Spain, Germany, France, and England are not that far apart from each other. We're all quite Central Europe. How can things be so dramatically different? And that's why I feel like this Premier League situation is just all money based. And I can't see any feasible way that this season is finished on the pitch without there being some sort of ramification of clubs. I mean, you talked about Leeds and West Brom, for example. Clearly the best two sides in the Championship, but it's not like a Liverpool situation where they're 20 points clear and we're guaranteed promotion. Clubs like Nottingham Forest, Fulham, for example, would probably say, well, hang on a second. Like we had, Leeds and West Brom are first and second, but we had every chance of catching up. West Brom were on the slide, coming into this issue. Leeds were on the rise. West Brom could turn around and say, well, hang on, we would have been champions. Leeds could turn around and say, well, we were on a better run, we would have been champions. Then there's revenue from that. There's the issue, if you go back to the Premier League, of, as you say, who goes up, who goes down. There's player contracts. If you look at a player like Jack Grealish, for example, at Villa, he's a wanted man, if you believe reports. If Villa stay in the Premier League, his price is so much more than if Villa are potentially not in the Premier League again, or are in, like, if a club stays up as a default, not relegated as a default, surely the valuations have to change, because the players could turn around and say, well, I'm not signing a new contract, I'm due to leave next season, and the club could turn around and say, well, hang on a second, we can't, we're gonna seek legal action from you because we can't hold your value, because if there's a second wave of this and the season gets postponed again, that's gonna affect the value. Or the club could say, we want 40 million up front for a player because we need the money now. So I just don't, I can't see any feasible way that these things can happen. Do you feel like there's more to it than just the on-pitch return? And especially when you look at how all the leagues are dealing with it, do you feel like we're almost kind of behind in what we're doing? Like you say, we're just sat there waiting for somebody else, almost as if to say, well, we don't want to commit yet. Or do you think it's all down to what the government say tomorrow? Is that coming into the thinking?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. It's the kind of double wishy-washiness from the Premier League and from the government in terms of what it wants to do, what it shouldn't be doing. I think that's where we've kind of got the kind of big thing where we're all kind of confused by the situation. I think with France, they've certainly been very aggressive in the way they've dealt with the whole situation. I remember a couple of weeks ago, Macron coming out and saying, right, you guys couldn't be trusted. We had you do kind of an easy lockdown, but you were all out. You were sunbathing in the middle of Paris. You're all down at the beaches. Sorry, you're all locked in your house now for the next 2 weeks. You had your chance. And I think they've been a bit more aggressive in the way they've dealt with the general public.
The right way, by the way, I think, for people who abuse rules. But yeah.
Yes. Whereas, I think we've been a bit more wishy-washy about the whole thing. It'd be interesting to kind of see what happens on Thursday evening, where we kind of get the update of what's going to happen, because I don't think we're in a position yet to kind of roll out of everything. But we shall see from that point of view. In terms of getting the sport back, in terms of getting leagues back, I can kind of see each individual country sorting themselves out. The question I've got is intercontinental, because as you say, France borders Germany, borders Italy, borders Spain. This is my geography knowledge coming out now. And France has been completely locked itself down. But what if PSG is, you kind of say, bringing the Champions League back? Bayern are still in it. There's representatives from Spain. Lyon are still there. We've got Juve at the moment are still there anyway. But you've got all of these countries that, we're going to see internal travel for it. And to be honest, I'd be worried about PSG and Lyon, because you know what? You've just done blanket, you've got rid of the league. It's not happening. So whereas the Premier League is looking to bring in these kind of measures, where the Bundesliga is bringing in these measures, France hasn't got that. And I'd wonder whether or not PSG or Lyon would be allowed back into the Champions League or even into Europa League as well, with the other cup competition that's available. Is will these teams be allowed back in if their league is still running or isn't running, because they haven't got the same kind of levels in terms of isolation? Because to be fair, it's not that, I wouldn't say, teams of that kind of elite level are getting private jets most of the time to games. So it's not out of, it's not going to be that difficult to see them kind of isolate in terms of travel across continent. But it is that question of how are they going to do it, and what happens if, Spain's safety standards are different to Italy's safety standards and they're different to the Premier League safety standards. Are we going to be happy a team's going to be happy traveling to that country? What's going to happen then?
Yeah, and also, like, bringing it back to the domestic game, I mean, like you said, if they bring the leagues back, transport, travel, Portsmouth are going to travel very differently to Arsenal. What are you going to do? Like, get buses that have got seats that are welded apart now? We're going to have to change everything. Club canteens, are they going to have to change? I mean, there's so much fallout that we're not really prepared for. I know things will happen gradually, but just on like a human perspective, where do you sort of sit in terms of, like, we're both in the UK ourselves, from a sporting perspective? It does strike me that football is the only sport that's even discussing coming back at this stage, which I suppose you can kind of understand, because it's the national game and generates the most money, etc., and so on. But is it does it alarm you slightly that from the first whistle we all kind of panicked and the streets were bare and people were indoors, and it was noticeable? I think wherever you went in the country, you could see people were worried. Is it sort of the same way you are, much like where I am now, where particularly I've noticed in the last maybe week to 10 days, people have almost just kind of gone, it's fine, just sort of throwing their hands up and said, do you know what? I know what the government is saying, but it's fine. We're seeing less and less stories about good cheerful sort of NHS stories. We're hearing less and less fundraising. We're seeing more and more people say go out and do just treat life like it's normal. That's going to bleed into sport, isn't it? If you suddenly bring football back, these people that they're not abusing the rules, because they haven't, as you said, it's not like France. We haven't been told you have to stay in. It's not a legal requirement. But it's blatantly obvious that people are now starting to take the piss a bit. Yeah. So that's going to bleed into sport, isn't it? You're going to see people travel. You're going to see people going either to games or not just to games, pub lock-ins, going around to each other's houses. It's a bit bigger than just the sport itself, isn't it? What's your view on, like, the country and how we're dealing with it in the UK as a whole?
Yeah, it's certainly come that kind of feeling where people have said, you know what, I've done my lockdown. Yeah, and I haven't got it. So how bad can it be?
I'm fine. Yeah.
You know what? I've been to Tesco. I've been to whatever other supermarkets are out there, and you know what? I've not got it, which is the point of lockdown. I think that's where people are kind of missing the things. Like, you know what? I haven't caught it, so I've done my safe distancing. So they're always going to try and push the boundary or push that limit, and it'll be fine. It'll be all right. I can just get that, and I've certainly noticed it. I say it depends on which supermarket you go into for which one has more, which one is better at social distancing, shall we say, of the, not necessarily the colleagues that are in there, but in terms of the people your fellow shoppers. And I'd say, having traveled to various different ones, I'd say the clientele or the people who travel to a Waitrose don't give a fuck anymore now. They're just walking around. They don't care. Their second house, they need to load that up. You know, it's that kind of group at the moment.
Fingering all the food, putting it back. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I need to see which avocado is the ripe one.
Oh,
so I need to give everyone a squeeze.
But
yeah, it's that kind of feeling at the moment, which is where you kind of hope a more aggressive line kind of comes into place.
That leads me into, sorry to cut you off, but that leads me nicely into my next question, really, which is linked to the same thing. There's this expectation that the UK government will make the decision tomorrow. Again, we're recording on the Wednesday. The thought is the decision to ease lockdown will happen tomorrow. Now, what ease lockdown means is open to interpretation. Is that what you think will happen? Because if it was me, to use a wrestling term, hopefully Ross listens to this, he'll like this, I would turn heel. I'd go full heel if I was government, and I'd say, do you know what? We've thought long and hard about this. We've looked at the stats, and you lot are idiots. So what we've decided is, because the majority of you couldn't behave, and because the majority of you clearly don't have the sense to just do what you're told, and just go out for exercise, or when you are out, respecting the space of others, we're going to see how this goes for another 3 weeks, but you're now in, and that's it. And unless you've got a damn good reason as to why you're outside, or unless you are clearly exercising, that's it. Let's try the Spanish approach or the French approach. But I sort of feel like there's a growing number of people. We've seen protesters in London, all with their tinfoil hats on, and other places in the UK, I should say, sort of saying it's a government control thing. You have these weirdos that seem to think it's a 5G thing. Jesus. Do you sort of feel like that government decision is going to be to ease it? And is that almost going to be football and sports way out of all this, to sort of say, well, the government said it's okay, so that's our way forward?
Good question. I think what we might see is something like them say, right, this is our plan for easing out of lockdown, but we're not easing out of lockdown to the end of May. Something like that is how I feel we'll probably see it. Don't think they'll double down on stuff. I think there's quite a lot of kind of thin-skinnedness and a lot of maintaining of ego. And I think if anyone came out and agreed they needed a more aggressive lockdown, I don't think they'd be able to cope with the fallout of that.
No,
necessarily. So I think that's where we might see them almost kind of chicken out of it. I
feel like crime would rise as well.
Yeah.
I feel like if they tried to instill, it's almost been we'd like you to do this. I feel like if they imposed it, I feel like you're going to get idiots who will go out there and start looting and causing crime.
Yeah, definitely. I think also kind of onto the football side of things, when football comes back, the game Liverpool finally win the league, we'll know where that is, right? It doesn't matter if it's happening at Anfield or a neutral venue. We know where that neutral venue is because we'll have seen it on TV. And it will already have said, live from, I don't know, the Amex would seem like a weird place they'd do it, but to be fair, it's where the league was won last year. But say Villa Park, what's the chances that every Liverpool fan, because it's the first league they've won for 30 years, doesn't assemble outside Villa Park, or doesn't assemble outside of Anfield to see the return, or outside of, is it Carrington is their training ground? Is that United?
Even in Liverpool,
or is it Melwood?
Melwood. Yeah, Melwood. Yeah, Carrington's
United. Yeah, so outside Melwood. What's the chances are there? Because it's one of those three places, basically, is where the Liverpool team bus will be at some point, either dropping off the players or picking them up to take them back.
Yeah.
Because I imagine it's not like when you're on a school trip and the bus goes around, stops at everyone's house and drops you all off. Right, next stop, Klopp's house.
Yeah,
just goes around and right, off you get, Klopp. You got anything else? So, give me a second. Left my sandwiches on the bus.
Or like a lad's holiday where they stop off at that awful hotel as you go and drop off it. Yeah,
absolutely. Stops at the B&B just outside the things. You can go to the toilet.
Yeah,
So that's going to happen. it happened in France.
Yeah.
You know, which PSG game was it?
The Dortmund quarterfinal, Dortmund last 16, where all the fans assembled outside. In fairness, the only caveat I'd have to that is this was right at the very beginning, where I think a lot of people didn't realise how serious this was going to become. But they were still advised to stay away. They still turned up. Exactly.
Yeah, it's still going to happen. You know, the routes into Liverpool are going to be, they're going to have lots of traffic on them because people are going to travel to it. And to be fair,
pressure on the police as well.
Yeah, and to be fair, if I was local to the Emirates and Arsenal won the league there, would I contemplate going out? Might put a face mask on. You know what? I probably would.
Be hard not to.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the kind of thing you're looking at, especially after that kind of time without winning it. And I think that's the problem, is if they just announced Liverpool have won the league, that's it. You don't get that public gathering necessarily, or at least where the public gathering would happen would be so spread out.
You could control it.
You could
manage
more or less control it. Some people might turn up at Melwood. Some people might turn up at Anfield. But the numbers are going to be so much lower because the team isn't there. So you're not going to.
And this is coming from two of us that I'd like to think. Listeners to this might disagree, of course, but I'd like to think we're quite level-headed, mature, intelligent individuals. Mostly, that's coming from us, where we both, you've said, and I said, I would agree with you. If our teams won the league, it'd be very hard to not enjoy that with others or go and celebrate it. That's coming from people who have a sensible, mature head on. There's also, unfortunately, and this is not a Liverpool thing, this is across the country, where whoever you support, wherever you live, there's a lot of very uneducated and very I've got to be careful how I phrase this. We'll just stick with uneducated people who don't necessarily have a lot of common sense, or maybe not very well educated, and have this belief that it won't happen to me. There's going to be a lot of those people, not just the sensible people who'll say, crack out the bubbly, missus, and we'll have a lovely evening together. There are going to be a lot of people who just don't have the common sense. And you only have to look at, particularly like Brits abroad, for example, how we feel like we can take over a city when we're abroad. I could see that happening, in somewhere like Liverpool, and not just in Liverpool. Team survives relegation. What if Norwich stay up? What if Leeds get promoted? You're telling me that loads of people are not, Leeds have been out of the Premier League for 17, 18 years now? You're telling me that they're hardcore base, one of the most followed and heavily tribal supported teams in the UK. You're seriously telling me that there isn't going to be a mass gathering in Leeds city centre if they get promoted? Of course, the bloody is. Yeah. And then that in turn puts further pressure on the emergency services, the police and the healthcare workers, and it puts pressure, I think, as well on the clubs. Because they're essentially going to have to answer to their fans, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think that's where we might see a little bit of pushback from clubs that you wouldn't expect pushing back. At the moment, it's the relegate or the clubs that could be relegated that are pushing back at the moment, rightly so, because their main advantage at this time of the season is clubs with nothing to play for coming to their grounds and just cruising through 90 minutes. That's where they pick up their points. Think of how many great escapes there have been in Premier League and EFL history. Just Premier League, you've got the Sunderland ones. Leicester didn't win the title the season before. That was a great escape. I think they did that on the second to last or last game of the season.
Yeah, same.
They stayed up.
West Brom as well, wasn't it? That season where they were dead and buried and stayed up. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many of them. There's always. It's weird because it is this point of the season ish. About 10 games left, where you look at it and you go, well, history tells me that one of those three in the bottom three isn't going to be there by the end of this. And it's normally that team in 19th.
Yeah.
The team in 18th is still like, oh yeah, I can still do it. We could pick up points somewhere. They're kind of targeting games. 20th are probably dead and buried most of the time, and it's that 1 in 19th we've got nothing to lose at this moment. We're going to go for it. You know, every game's a final kind of mentality, and just try and pick up points.
Yeah.
And it's always that kind of, the other club that's too big to go down, they're the one that kind of stumbles.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to kind of see if the Premier League managed to placate those clubs, then is it on to Liverpool? It's on to them. Because as we kind of said, all right, you're announced, you win the trophy. How are you going to help with your fans in terms of crowd control?
Yeah, what are you going to do? Yeah, yeah. And at this stage, I almost, I mean, you know, I'm a, as like yourself and like all of us who do this podcast. I mean, you know, we're all football fans. You know, I've missed the game, but I don't want it back at this stage. I don't want it back until we know that 100% it's being managed correctly. And I don't. Yeah, it's not always about me or us, but you know, I don't want the game back sanitized. I don't want it back with no fans. You know, Ross used the example in our group today about what sort of the WWE and AEW, the two large wrestling organizations in the US, are doing. You know, they're continuing with their shooting and filming, and you know, it was anybody who watched like WrestleMania, for example, this year. Okay, there was some entertainment in it and stuff, but ultimately it's a hollow feeling. It's not the same. It's the crowd reaction, the sort of that tribal nature and the following. That's what gets you involved in the game. Anyone that watched that England-Croatia game, was it behind closed doors? I mean, it's just not the same. And there's only so much interest you can get from hearing players shout for 5 minutes. And I know that Sky are talking about potentially piping in atmosphere noises, and there's talk of green screens for fans. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, it's just, you know, it's like something from Tron, isn't it? I mean, it's just not real life, is it?
I can't see things like a green screen really coming into play. Just in terms of the amount of data it would take to send that back down the kind of line to everybody's televisions. I'm not sure that's really gonna fly. Pumping in atmosphere, to be fair, they do already manipulate crowd sounds.
Yeah,
games.
Didn't they?
Well, yeah, I've definitely heard it. It happens across sport. Twickenham is the one that comes to mind. When Swing Low comes on, that's piped round. As is, you know, crowd noise it's just piped round. It happens. There's no. It's definitely it's not a new thing, and it's definitely manipulated on Sky and BT. I mean, how often have you heard that particularly vocal chap at a particular stadium who's effing and jeffing and next to the commentary box, and they have to slowly tone down certain sounds across it? They're always manipulating it.
Or when Sky are getting abused by a certain like Leeds.
Or BT Sport, I think it's one of the two, always gets caught out on Sky when it's champions, when it's Man City. Moves a game or something. They're always gonna hear that around, unless they artificially pump that in as well. That'd be nice.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
It would be interesting to kind of throw in. And again, with crowd noise, is it just going to be the oohs and ahs, or is it going to be
exactly?
You know,
they was talking about there was talk about having the games like in delay so they could time it right, so that they would, you know, they'd have like 3 or 4 moments in advance so that they could, you know, time the right time to pump in whatever crowd noise was relevant to that. So I mean, it's baffling, isn't it? I just I really don't get it. I
mean, then assuming every game is also going to be broadcast, for journalistic sake, you know, they've got to have access to it, unless they're bringing something in. I can't remember what is the program where you can get every single game. It's an online resource.
Oh, right. I was like what Amazon did, where you could pick and choose.
A little bit. It's only games that have been played, but in terms of what it is, it gets called. Someone like Michael Cox always goes on about it in terms of basically an archive of every single game. Mass database costs certain money. It's basically for journalists.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it's for generally, so they can rewatch games, rewatch highlights and stuff.
Yeah.
And is it going to be something like that then gets the licenses to control the thing? So I'm just thinking of the likes of, you know, our mate Simon from ABW.
Yeah.
You know, currently isn't working, what's going to happen when football comes back? Because are they going to let journalists back into the stadium? Seems a bit of a, crazy way of bringing it back. Is if, at least you can kind of control what's going on with players-ish. But then, players have families. You don't know who these players are living with as well. Some of the foreign players are bringing over, family members because it's a better quality of life.
Well, they've got,
but you've still got young children or elderly parents they brought over. Just thinking, Aubameyang's got his dad over. He's got a lot of his extended family there. His dad's going to be, well, if Aubameyang's 31, his dad, you're going to say, is going to be in his 50s.
Yeah, I think he's near his 60s, 70s. I think.
Yeah, exactly. So he's going to be of that kind of age that's in an at-risk category. And does he want to be going out, potentially catching it off, who say any player, even just within his squad, that might catch it, and then bring it home to his dad?
I think Sergio Aguero did the same, didn't he? I think he was one of the first players to sort of come out over the weekend in a Spanish interview and just sort of said, I'm not really comfortable coming back. And our players going to be penalised for refusing to come back. I mean, that's
another great club to go, because David Silva's son as well.
Yeah, exactly.
He had to take time off earlier in the season because his son was so ill.
Yeah, exactly that. There was... again, I hate to use a wrestling reference, but one of their main stars, if you like, Roman Reigns, has been essentially phased out of all advertising by WWE because he is in remission from leukemia and has survived 2 strains essentially through treatment. And he said, "I'm not doing it. I'm just not doing it." And since then, they've taken him off all the marketing. They've taken him off all of basically his name has been banned throughout any form of the dressing room. So what if that happens in football and a player turns around and says, no, I'm not going to play? Does the club have a moral responsibility to then fine the player for a lack of discipline? Or, does that mean you drop a player as a result of that? I mean,
there's some more precedent for this in the lower leagues in England than in the Premier League. When you look at international breaks. So obviously the Premier League takes a break when it's an international break, but the leagues below in the EFL don't break up. The Championship might do every so often.
Yeah, depends on the level of
the
players.
It depends on the level. But yeah, that's where it comes in. Like League One, League Two, you can have a certain club will write to them, say, we've got 5 players that called up for international duty, and they go, okay, we'll change your fixture. And we'll slide it in somewhere else. And when you've got these kind of clubs that are down in the size of those clubs, there is that kind of thing where you'll have 5 players that say, I don't want to play this. Like saying they're on international duty, and the club could go around and say, well, we've got precedent, we've got 5 players unavailable. And it's because they're not choosing to play for us, they're choosing to play for their country, or just not play.
Isn't there as well? So many things to consider. And I appreciate, football survived 2 world wars. I'm sure things will get back to normal, but it just strikes me that it feels like we're getting rushed. That's what it feels like to me, and it feels to me like money is at the heart of all of this, and that's the concern. Just to finish off today, I do just want to ask you what you can foresee. Not so much the future being, because we'll continue to report on whatever happens in the various countries, but do you feel like this will be do you feel like the game itself will change as a result of this? I mean, we've been over contracts and transfer market and all that. We know that's going to change for definite, but do you feel like some things will change in terms of the supporter experience? Do you think this might make people reconsider how much money they spend on season tickets, whether they travel to games? Do you feel like the game itself from a supporter point of view will change?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd say, interestingly, back in April, I was rather, how would I describe it? Let's go with it. Pissed off to receive a congratulations, you've got to the point on the season ticket list where you can now get a season ticket.
Yeah.
Would you like to get one for next season? And I was sitting there going, what? This is just after, excuse me, football has been called off. And, the deadline's there. It's fine. I can kind of sit on it and understand why clubs are pushing for it. But what happens for next season? German teams or Germany, the Bundesliga, have kind of suggested they wouldn't have fans maybe for the entirety of next season.
Yeah, exactly.
There'd be a whole season behind closed doors. Now, whereas, we've kind of seen, certainly from an Arsenal point of view, the way it's been pushed is the Bayern Munich model. And I think they've said before, how a lot of football fans that know the global game have said Bundesliga is the best thing because tickets are dirt cheap, great atmosphere, and you can drink in your seat. Those are the kind of holy trinity of things you get there. There's groups of supporters. I think there's a Dortmund supporters club in Manchester that flies out for every game for them, which I think kind of says that that's how cheap tickets are. So I don't think they'll necessarily miss the income, but that's where in the English game we will. Because whilst we've got the 30s plenty campaign in the Premier League, that doesn't exist in the Championship.
No.
I remember going to see Villa versus Brighton and being charged 50 quid for that ticket because it was Category A game. And yeah, it's that kind of thing that is a huge bit of revenue for the club to get in. And whereas in, a team the size of Bayern, they're probably getting in, 1 million or so if they dropped if they lost the tickets that they get every week. In the Premier League, we're talking of like tens of millions. There's clubs that solely rely on wages or on people coming through the gates, on the fans for it. So how they'll kind of recoup that would be interesting. Whether or not we see more kind of, I think the way to kind of deal with it is to put the broadcast revenues almost back into the clubs almost.
Yeah.
Or for like the EFL to take it on board and the Premier League to take it on board so they can kind of control it and then spread it out evenly to perhaps try and sustain it a little bit like you've got in the NFL or in the NBA, where you buy a season ticket for your club and you see all their games. I think that's the only way we're going to have to try and do it. But as much as you can do that in the Premier League, you've also got to have someone going to Forest Green Rovers every week.
Yeah, exactly that.
To film them, get some commentary over it as well. So it's still going to be in place, but I think we might see more kind of digital solutions for it, which would be really interesting from kind of a like personal point of view.
Yeah.
To see how they kind of deal with that. But I can only see it if it's without fans, they're going to have to get some form of season ticketing in, or some form of revenue, so that everyone can kind of see their games. And if that's a pay-per-view system for just your club, I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. It's just setting up that infrastructure. That's also got to happen. And then what happens when football comes back as well?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
how many people are now comfortable with the fact of, you know what, I don't have to go to travel now to go and see my club.
Yeah,
I've got my season ticket, my digital season ticket. I get every game. It's raining outside. You know what? Let's not go to the game.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to can I be bothered to put my ticket on a ticket exchange system? Just because in the morning I've looked at it and looked at the weather. It's not great. My stadium's got no cover either.
Yeah.
Whilst the club don't necessarily mind, because fundamentally you've paid for your ticket. They might lose out in terms of food and stuff, if they're kind of assuming, we've all been to try and pay for a hot dog at the Emirates or at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's about 15 quid for that and a drink. So that's another 10, 15 pounds that they're losing from every additional seat that's not turning up. Yeah. So that would be the wonder of how it kind of comes back. But
I think even Liverpool put on hold their expansion of Anfield because they want to see what happens before they commit to.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. The one that is interesting is United still persevering with their safe standing.
Yeah,
That's an interesting one that's coming through. And to be honest, it does actually give them additional times to be doing these things.
Yeah, it's a good time, isn't it?
Yeah. It's whether or not you kind of got the money in place. I think a stadium that is kind of sad to see at the moment is the state of Villa Park.
Yeah.
Since Villa Park hasn't been used for FA Cup semi-finals.
Yeah.
That now that's kind of, it's almost deteriorated, especially since Villa then kind of tumbled down the leagues. That putting money back into the stadium hasn't necessarily been a thing they need to do.
No.
I would wonder whether or not they take this time, because it's also the case of any repairs you need to do to your stadium has to be done within a 3-month window. And some repairs just can't be done in that time. We've seen how Fulham don't have a stand at the moment.
Yeah.
At one end, so a wayward shot goes into the Thames.
Yeah.
I think you'll maybe see some more ambitious projects if they're given that kind of time to develop them.
Yeah.
So whilst you've got an empty stadium, not having a stand isn't as much of an issue.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see if, especially with Villa, if Villa are told, what, you've not budgeted to be in the Premier League next season. You're going to be in the Premier League next season. Here's your broadcast revenue. It's going to be, 120 million or whatever it is for next year. And they'll go, you know what, 40 million we're going to use towards reviving that stadium that sorely needs it. And I'm sure there's plenty of others around up and down the league that having that kind of comfort means that they can do a bit more kind of infrastructural changes.
Yeah.
And big long-term projects can happen.
Yeah, it feels like clubs will rethink their strategies, doesn't it? Long term, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's definitely one that will run and run. As I say, we wanted to bring you sort of an update on the English game. I mean, as we said, time of recording today, things are a little bit up in the air because we're much like Germany, waiting on the governmental quote unquote decision that we feel we'll probably get tomorrow with regards to what happens, and we'll probably know a little bit more then about what's going to happen, and when we sort of get together as a group, we'll probably have hopefully a better outcome in terms of knowing where we are or where we're going. So yes, keep us sort of adjusted to that frequency, if you will, and we will keep you posted. Josh, if people want to follow you directly, they can do so, I believe, on the Twitters. People want to find you or pick up or ask you anything, do you want to let them know where they can do that?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter. What my Twitter handle is, though, sometimes confuses even me. It is BN Josh, which is at, obviously, Bravo November, Josh, Echo Delta. There we go. Do a bit of showing off in that as well. So yeah, you can grab me there, and we can chat anything. At the moment, I've got a poll running for all those Arsenal fans for who our next number 7 should be. So
there you go, get involved.
There's always something on there.
Or even if you're not, I mean, you can get involved.
If you're not, you can jump on and comment and just say who you want to be on your number 7.
Yeah, absolutely.
Might be a wild one. I saw Kai Havertz being one of them. Can't see happening in the next ever.
No. I think it's more likelihood that I play internally than someone like that. But I guess we never know.
Yes.
Just before we go, I do just want to give 2 quick shout outs. Three kind of, but one, please don't worry about, just speaking of Twitter, we are working on things. We're going to be sort of updating graphics and all sorts of bits and bobs about that, but we're not going to rush with that. We're going to take our time before we sort of relaunch kind of Twitter and everything. So if you have got any questions for us, or if you want to ask us anything directly, the best thing to do is leave a YouTube comment if you watch us on YouTube, or give us a shout directly on our Twitters. I'm sure you'll be able to find us by now, but yeah, just leave us a message and we'll get back to you. I do want to give a special shout out, and a get well soon, former listener, or our former guys. We had a listener by the name of Korosh Musavi. He's been very unwell recently, not directly linked to the coronavirus, but he's had a really bad time of it health-wise recently. So I do just want to give him our best wishes and love from the pod, and hope he recovers well. He was always a really good contributor to our previous guys, wrote some really fantastic articles for us as well on German football. So Korosh, if you're listening, we're thinking of you, my friend, and hopefully you get well soon. And also, I want to give a little shout out to my best mate, Ian, or as I know him, Yanni. He's just recently joined Twitter, and he messaged me out the blue the other day. He lives in a different city to me, and says, "I just listened to your podcast." I was like, of all the people I never thought would listen to a podcast, he was right up there at the top of the list. So, Yanni, if you're listening, hopefully you've enjoyed the second one, and many more to come, and hopefully you and the family are well. So yes, keep yourselves sane, boys and girls. Myself and Josh, obviously, thank you for tuning in tonight, whenever this is that you're listening to this, and we will aim to be back. And Josh, I think we'll be back as a group setting, hopefully in the next week or so. Plan is, or certainly within the next fortnight. So looking forward to that. I guess until then, we just have to hope that things run smoothly.
Yeah, definitely. And can't wait to go back as the collective again.
Yes.
It's been too long, and hopefully this time we'll do it where I don't have to run off early as well.
yeah, hopefully so. Schedules is always the hardest part of podcasting, as anyone who's done know, but hopefully we can sort something out. But yes, thank you very much for your time, Josh. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you for yours as well. To be fair, there's no Danny today as well. This has all been done by yours truly, so I am the unfortunate button monkey.
Dannyless, a Dannyless pod. As we said, look out for another one. I think the next plan to record is with Lana, so I'll probably be back at some point in the next couple of days. I'm having a chat with Lana and Joel and Drew to follow that as well. So keep tuned in, keep the feedback coming. Again, thank you so much for everyone who has listened to our first pod and who will listen to this. And if there is any questions or anything you want to cover, just let us know and we'll do our best. But until then, keep your head strong and your glasses trendy. I remembered it this time. Hey. We'll speak to you very soon.